All right, so we are now live on. YouTube and TikTok simultaneously, and just plugging in this extra light here. And so to start off, I will be okay. That makes the light a lot better. That improved the lighting a ton. So I have three lights the backlight, the side light, and my selfie light. But anyway, to continue, I am also streaming this reading on TikTok. So if you are on TikTok, you can also follow me on there or subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are on my TikTok stream right now. So where we left off was page 42, I believe. And just because I did have to chop a little bit of the previous chapter just because I'm not used to reading for so long. Yeah, but actually I had to cut off a few minutes, so I don't believe I remember where I chopped it off. Just a moment. I'm going to have to go back to my YouTube feed just to see where I actually made the edit so I know where I can continue with this next video. And obviously on the video that I put up after I edit this, this section probably won't be there and it'll just be fluid as I go through the video. So I'm just going to look up on my YouTube here. And I'm thankful for anyone that joins in I don't know where I put the edit. We are processing the video. So I think I made it about I was confronted author who once loomed large on the literary horizon of America. I was preparing a magazine article to authors, and I asked Davis to tell me about his method of work. A few weeks earlier, I had received a letter from someone with this notation at the bottom: dictated but not read. I was quite impressed. I felt that the writer must be very big, busy, and important. I wasn't the slightest bit busy, but I was eager to make an impression on Richard Harding Davis, so I ended up in short notes with words dictated but not read. He never troubled to answer the letter. He simply returned it to me with a scribble across the bottom. Your bad manners are exceeded only by your bad manners. Okay, so I know where I left off, so I'll continue from there. Okay, so I'm just gonna... All right. So I found out where I left off in the last reading. And we'll continue from there. Page 42. An impression on Richard Harding Davis. So I ended in one short note with the words dictated but not read. He never troubled to answer the letter. He simply returned it to me with this scribbled across the bottom: your bad manners are only exceeded by your bad manners. True, I had blundered, and perhaps I deserved this rebuke, but being human, I resented it. I resented it so sharply that when I read of the death of Richard Harding Davis 10 years later and one thought still persisted in my mind. I am ashamed to admit, was the hurt he had given me. If you and I were to stir up resentment tomorrow and make rankle across decades and ensure until death, just let us indulge in little stinging criticism, no matter how certain we are that it is justified. When dealing with people, let us remember that we are not dealing with creatures of logic. We are dealing with creatures of emotion, creatures bristling with prejudices and motivated by pride and vanity. Bitter criticism caused the sensitive Thomas Hardy, one of the finest novelists to ever enrich English literature, to give up forever the writing of fiction. Criticism drove Thomas Chatterton, an English poet, to suicide. Benjamin Franklin, tactless in his youth, became so diplomatic, so adroit at handling people that he was made American ambassador to France. The secret of his success? I will speak ill of no man, he said, and speak all the good I know of everybody. Any fool can criticize, condemn, and complain, and most fools do. But it takes character and self-control to be understanding and forgiving. A great man shows his greatness, says Carlyle, by the way he treats little men. Bob Hoover, a famous test pilot and frequent performer at air shows, was returning to his home in Los Angeles from an air show in San Diego. As described in the magazine Flight Operations, at 300 feet in the air, both engines suddenly stopped. By deft maneuvering, he managed to land the plane, but it was badly damaged, although nobody was hurt. Hoover's first act after the emergency landing was to inspect the airplane's fuel. Just as he had suspected, the World War II propeller plane he had been flying had been filled with jet fuel rather than gasoline. Upon returning to the airport, he asked to see the mechanic who had serviced his airplane. The young man was sick with the agony of his mistake. Tears streamed down his face as Hoover approached. He had just caused the loss of a very expensive plane and could have caused the loss of 3 lives as well. You can imagine Hoover's anger. One could anticipate the tongue lashing that his proud and precise pilot would unleash for that carelessness. But Hoover didn't scold the mechanic. He didn't even criticize him. Instead, he put his big arm around the man's shoulders and said, "To show you I'm sure that you'll never do this again, I want you to service my F-51 tomorrow." Often parents are tempted to criticize their children. You would often expect me to say, "Don't." But I will not. I am merely going to say, before you criticize them, read one of the classics of American journalism, Father Forgets. It originally appeared as an editorial in the People's Home Journal. We are reprinting it here with the author's permission as condensed in the Reader's Digest. So for those of you who have just joined in my lobby, in my live stream, I am reading How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I think, yeah, because I am multi-streaming at the moment. I am on both on TikTok and on YouTube. So I am reading just the final pages of chapter 1 and to continue on to chapter 2. Since I am taking a bit of a break here at the moment, I'm just going to go boil some water real quick. Hello, Francis Con Variola 5. Thanks for joining. And hello, Gorilla Bear Tech on YouTube. I'm just going to go boil some water for some tea, and then I'll come back to continue with the rest of the reading. Thanks. Please be patient. Thanks. Okay, so while the water's boiling, come on, man. Tease, you sound like a soy boy. Get some Red Bull. I don't have the money to afford Red Bull at the moment, so I'm drinking green tea. I am Asian. I am Indian. We drink tea. I don't like soy. I do not like soy at all. I prefer almond milk, not soy milk. Cool. Cool. All right, so I might as well finish the reading of this chapter since the tea is being prepared. Sorry, while the water's boiling. And where was I? We're reprinting it here with author's permission as condensed in Reader's Digest. Father Forgets is one of those little pieces which, dashed off in a moment of sincere feeling, strikes an echoing chord in so many readers as to become a perennial reprint favorite. Since its first appearance, Father Forgets has been reproduced, writes the author, W. Livingston Larned, in hundreds of magazines, house organs, and in newspapers the country over. I'll get to your comment in a second. It has been reprinted almost as extensively in many foreign languages. I have given permission to thousands who wish to read it from school. From school, church, and lecture platforms. It has been on the air on countless occasions and programs. Oddly enough, college periodicals have used it and high school magazines. Sometimes a little piece seems mysteriously to click. This one certainly did. Okay, so I'm just about to read that, but my water is just boiled, so I'm going to make some tea and come back. And Gorilla Bear Tech, your teeth too nice to be English. Never heard of that, English Indian. I am actually Kiwi Indian, although I'm actually Fijian Indian. I'm not sure if that's a distinction that I have to make. I am Indian, but I'm not from India, and I'm not British Indian. But thank you for your question. Fastest boiling water ever, Kiwi. New Zealand. Have you heard of New Zealand before? So it's that country next to Australia, Fiji. Fijian Islands. They're in the Pacific. I've got some people adding me on LinkedIn too. So things are going good at the end of the day. Yeah. All right, I'm just gonna get my tea sorted. Okay, this tea bag's still good. So what's that? So. I'm having green NZ like the water. I think you mean Fiji like the water. I believe that's what you mean there. Fiji. There's a brand of bottled water called Fiji water. And yes, that is the same Fiji. Anyway, while my tea is steeping here in the bag, yeah. Anyway, so the next part is an excerpt from Father Forgets. So Fiji is in New Zealand. No, Fiji is a separate country that resides within the Pacific Ocean, not too far from New Zealand. Yeah. And yeah, also hi to whoever's still on TikTok at the moment. All right, so this is steeping rather nicely. I don't add sugar to my tea. I don't know about, for green tea, I'd rather have it without the sugar. But yeah. Anyway, the next is from Father Forgets by W. Livingston Larned. Listen, son, I am saying this as you lie asleep. One little paw crumpled under your cheek and the blonde curls stickily wet on your damp forehead. I have stolen into your room alone. Just a few minutes ago, as I sat reading my paper in the library, a stifling wave of remorse swept over me. Guiltily, I came to your bedside. There are things I was thinking, son. I had been crossing to you. I scolded you as you were dressing for school because you gave your face merely a dab with a towel. I took you to task for not cleaning your shoes. I called out angrily when you threw some things on the floor. At breakfast, I found fault too. You spilt things, you gulped down your food, you put your elbows on the table, you spread butter too thick on your bread. And as you started off to play and I made for my train, you turned and waved a hand and called goodbye, Daddy. And I frowned and said in reply, hold your shoulders back. Hold your shoulders back. Then it began all over again in the late afternoon. As I came up the road, I spied you, down on your knees playing marbles. There were holes in your stockings. I humiliated you before your boyfriends by marching you ahead of me to the house. Stockings were expensive, and if you had to buy them, you would be more careful. Imagine that, son. From a father. Do you remember lately when I was reading in the library how you came in timidly with a sort of hurt look in your eyes? When I glanced up from my paper, impatient at the interruption, you hesitated at the door. What is it you want? I snapped. You said nothing but ran across in one tempestuous plunge and threw your arms around my neck and kissed me. And your small arms tightened with an affection that God had sent blooming in your heart and which even neglect could not wither. And then you were gone, pattering up the stairs. Well, son, it was shortly afterward that my paper slipped from my hands and terrible, sickening fear came over me. What has habit been doing for me? The habit of finding fault, of reprimanding, this was my reward to you for being a boy. It was not that I did not love you, it was that I expected too much of youth. I was measuring you by the yardstick of my own years. And there was so much that was good and fine and true in your character. The little heart of you was as big as the dawn itself over the wide hills. This was shown by your spontaneous impulse to rush in and kiss me goodnight. Nothing else matters tonight, son. I have come to your bedside in the darkness and have knelt there ashamed. It is a feeble atonement. I know you would not understand these feelings if I told them to you during your waking hours, but tomorrow I will be a real daddy. I will chum with you and suffer when you suffer and laugh when you laugh. I will bite my tongue when impatient words come. I will keep saying as if it were a ritual, he is nothing but a boy, a little boy. I am afraid I have visualized you as a man. Yet as I see you now, son, crumpled and weary in your cot, I see that you are still a baby. Yesterday you were in your mother's arms and head on her shoulder, and I asked too much, too much. Instead of condemning people, let's try to understand them. Let's try to figure out why they do what they do. That's a lot more profitable and intriguing than criticism. And it breeds sympathy, tolerance, and kindness. To know all is to forgive all. As Dr. Johnson said, God himself, sir, does not propose to judge man until the end of his days. Why should you and I? Principle 1. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain. That is the conclusion of chapter 1. So if any of you remember from the last video upload on the last live session, we got through the preface and chapter 1. So what we've learned here in the first chapter is that complaints, criticism, reprimanding people, scolding people, telling them off when it comes to social situations, while it has an immediate effect by, telling people off and trying to get your way, while it has an immediate effect, is not beneficial for return engagements. I've noticed this specifically in my life, especially when it comes to workmates and family, is that telling people off and scolding people doesn't really build bridges. It doesn't open lines of communication, especially if you come from a mixed background or ethnic household where different levels of English are spoken. and there is a cultural divide. Scolding people, whether it be in their mother tongue or in your own tongue, doesn't really help. I've noticed, specifically with my life and my relatives, is that this leads to a breakdown in the family unit and the cohesion of the family, is that people don't want to talk to each other. That makes a lot of difficulties. It makes you feel like you're not heard, like you're not wanted, like if you don't belong as part of this old idea of what our family cultural identity is, then you're useless and you're not going to earn money and you're not going to have a happy life. Whereas that's the old people's ego sort of playing out and them not really changing, whereas you as a young person have the ability to change. And if you're part of this live stream, whether it be on TikTok or YouTube, you have already shown initiative because you are listening to my words and the words of a very experienced man who has written a very influential book. So, that wrapping up chapter 1, the principle we learned is don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Now we move on to chapter 2, the big secret of dealing with people. I'm just going to have my tea break now. So thank you for those who are still in the session at the moment. Just wait for the temperature to drop. I think it's drinkable at the moment. And answering some questions. Gorilla Bear Tech, no milk or honey. I don't add milk, or I do sometimes add honey to my green tea or to black tea or to pu'er. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kuritsu. Thank you for joining. We're just doing a live reading, so I'm doing a reading of the book for both YouTube and TikTok. No, I don't add milk to my green tea. I don't add sugar to my green tea. I might sometimes add honey, but I find it doesn't really mix well. No, I just prefer plain green tea. Plain green tea as it is. I believe it's delicious as it is. I don't think it's necessary. I mean, some people like jasmine tea, jasmine green tea, all of that, but I prefer just plain green tea. Still a bit hot, but I hear New Zealand is nice nature. Yep. Once you get out of the major cities, the actual landscape of New Zealand is absolutely beautiful. That's the reason why so many people come here. We've got mountains, we've got desert, we've got forests, we've got tundra, we've got lakes, we've got rivers, we've got seas. We're surrounded by ocean. We have harbors. We have just immense like natural beauty in the forests that we have around here. As you know, Lord of the Rings was filmed in New Zealand. That's one good way. Man, let me move in, though. Well, I do hope you get the opportunity to come to this beautiful country one day. This is the second batch from this bag, so the power of the tea is definitely there. Yeah, about 3 minutes worth of steeping is enough. But I tend to leave it in longer if I'm just going to have the tea on its own. All right, let's continue. What is steep? Steep means to leave the tea leaves in the water to allow to let the flavors come in, to come out. If you leave the bag too long, it becomes bitter. So I don't know, if you're just making real quick tea, you only need to dunk the bag in, give it a quick stir and chuck it out. And that makes pretty decent tea as it is. But if you want real flavorful tea, especially for green tea, you let it steep for about 2 to 3 minutes. All right. Chapter 2, the big secret of dealing with people. There is only one way under high heaven to get anybody to do anything. Did you ever stop to think of that? Yep, just one way. And that is by making the other person want to do it. Remember, there is no other way. Of course, you can make someone want to give you his watch by sticking a revolver in his ribs. You can make your employees give you cooperation until your back is turned by threatening to fire them. You can make a child do what you want it to do by a whip or threat, but these crude methods have sharply undesirable repercussions. The only way I can get you to do anything is by giving you what you want. What do you want? Sigmund Freud said that everything you and I do springs from two motives: the sex urge and the desire to be great. John Dewey, one of America's most profound philosophers, phrased it a bit differently. Dr. Dewey said that the deepest urge in human nature is the desire to be important. Remember that phrase, the desire to be important. It is significant. You are going to hear a lot about it in this book. What do you want? Not many things, but a few things that you do wish, you crave with an insistence that will not be denied. Some of the things most people want to include: 1. Health and preservation of life. No, let me say that. I said that wrong. 1. Health and preservation of life. 2. Food. 3. Sleep. 4. Money and the things money will buy. 5. Life and the hereafter. 6. Sexual gratification. 7. The well-being of our children. 8. The feeling of importance. Almost all of these wants are usually gratified, all except one. But there is one longing almost as deep, almost as imperious as the desire for food or sleep, which is seldom gratified. It is what Freud calls the desire to be great. It is what Dewey calls the desire to be important. Lincoln once began a letter saying, "Everybody likes a compliment." William James said, "The deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated." He didn't speak, mind you, of the wish or the desire or the longing to be appreciated. He said the craving to be appreciated. Here is annoying and unfaltering human hunger, and the rare individual who honestly satisfies this heart hunger will hold people in the palm of his or her hand. And even the undertaker will be sorry when he dies. The desire for a feeling of importance is the one of the chief distinguishing differences between mankind and the animals. To illustrate, when I was a farm boy out in Missouri, my father bred fine Duroc Jersey hogs and pedigreed white-faced cattle. He used to exhibit our hogs and white-faced cattle at country fairs and livestock shows throughout the Middle West. He won first prize by the score. My father pinned his blue ribbons on a sheet of white muslin, and when friends or visitors came to the house, he would get a long sheet of muslin. Muslin, I think. He would hold one end and I would hold the other while he exhibited the blue ribbons. The hogs didn't care about the ribbons they had won, but father did. These prizes gave him the feeling of importance. If our ancestors hadn't had this flaming urge to feel for a feeling of importance, civilization would have been impossible. Without it, we would have been just like the animals. It was this desire for the feeling of importance that led an uneducated, poverty-stricken grocery clerk to study some law books, and he found in the bottom of a barrel of household plunder that he had bought for 50 cents. You have probably heard of this grocery clerk. His name was Lincoln. It was this desire for a feeling of importance that inspired Dickens to write his immortal novels. The desire inspired Sir Christopher Wren to design his symphonies in stone. The desire made Rockefeller amass millions that he never spent. And this same desire made the richest family in your town build a house far too large for its requirements. This desire makes you want to wear the latest styles, drive the latest cars, and talk about your brilliant children. It is the desire that lures many boys and girls into joining gangs and engaging in criminal activities. The average young criminal, according to E.P. Mulrooney, one-time police commissioner of New York, is filled with ego, and his first request after arrest is to be for those lurid newspapers to make him out to be a hero. The disagreeable prospect of serving time seems remote for so long as he can gloat over his likeness, sharing space with the pictures of sports figures, movie, TV stars, and politicians. If you tell me how you get your feeling of importance, I'll tell you what you are. That determines your character. That is most significant thing about you. For example, John D. Rockefeller got his feeling of importance by giving money to erect a modern hospital in Peking, China, to take care of millions of poor people whom he had never seen and never would see. Dillinger, on the other hand, got his feeling of importance by being a bandit, a bank robber, and killer. When the FBI agents were hunting him, he dashed into a farmhouse up in Minnesota and said, "I'm Dillinger." He was proud of the fact that he was a public enemy number one. "I'm not going to hurt you, but I'm Dillinger," he said. Yes, the one significant difference between Dillinger and Rockefeller is that they got their feelings of importance. History sparkles with the amusing examples of famous people struggling for a feeling of importance. Even George Washington wanted to be called His Mightiness, the President of the United States. And Columbus pleaded for the title of Admiral of the Ocean and Viceroy of India. Catherine the Great refused to open letters that were not addressed to Her Imperial Majesty. And Mrs. Lincoln in the White House turned upon Mrs. Grant like a tigress and shouted, "How dare you be seated in my presence until I invite you?" Our millionaires helped finance Admiral Byrd's expedition to the Antarctic in 1928 with the understanding that ranges of icy mountains would be named after them. And Victor Hugo aspired to have nothing less than the city of Paris renamed in his honor. Even Shakespeare's mightiest of the mighty tried to add luster to his name by procuring a coat of arms for his family. People sometimes became invalids in order to win sympathy and attention and get a feeling of importance. For example, take Mrs. McKinley. She got a feeling of importance by forcing her husband, the President of the United States, to neglect important affairs of state while he reclined on a bed beside her hours at the time. He was hours for her, soothing her to sleep. She fed her gnawing desire for attention by insisting that he remained with her while she was having her teeth fixed. And once created a stormy scene when he had to leave her alone with the dentist while he kept an appointment with John Hay, his Secretary of State. The writer Mary Roberts Rinehart once told me of a bright, vigorous young woman who became an invalid in order to get a feeling of importance. One day, said Mrs. Rinehart, this woman had been obliged to face someone her age, perhaps. The lonely years were stretched ahead, and there was little left for her to anticipate. She took to her bed, and then 10 years old, and for 10 years old, she took to her bed, and for 10 years, her old mother traveled to the third floor and back, carrying trays, nursing her, and then one day the old mother, weary with service, lay down and died. For some weeks, the invalid languished. Then she got up, put on her clothing, and resumed living again. Some authorities declared that people may actually go insane in order to find in the dreamland of insanity the feeling of importance that has been denied them in the harsh world of reality. There are more patients suffering from mental diseases in the United States than from all other diseases combined. What is the cause of this insanity? Nobody can answer such sweeping question, but we know that certain diseases such as syphilis break down and destroy the brain cells that result in insanity. In fact, 1/2 of all mental diseases can be attributed to such physical causes as brain lesions, alcohol, toxins, and injuries, but the other half and is the appalling part of the story. The other half of the people who go to insane apparently having nothing organically wrong with their brain cells. In post-mortem examinations, when their brain tissues were studied under the highest powered microscopes, these tissues are found to be apparently just as healthy as yours or mine. Why did these people go insane? I put that the question of head physician of one of our most important psychiatric hospitals, this doctor who has received highest honors and most coveted awards for his knowledge of the subject, told me frankly that he didn't know why people went insane. Nobody knows for sure, but he did say that many people who go insane find in insanity a feeling of importance that they were unable to achieve in the world of reality. When he told me this story, I have a patient right now whose marriage proved to be a tragedy. She wanted love, sexual gratification, children, and social prestige, but life blasted all her hopes. Her husband didn't love her. He refused to even eat with her and forced her to serve his meals in his room upstairs. She had no children, no social standing. She went insane, and in her imagination, she divorced her husband and resumed her maiden name. She now believes she is married into English aristocracy, and she insists on being called Lady Smith. And as for children, she imagines now that she has had a new child every night. Each time I call on her, she says, "Doctor, I had a baby last night." Life once wrecked all her dream ships on the sharp rocks of reality. But in the sunny fantasy isles of insanity, all her barkentines race into port with canvas billowing and wine singing into the masts. Tragic? Oh, I don't know. Her physician said to me if I could stretch out my hand and restore her sanity, I wouldn't do it. She is much happier as she is. If some people are so hungry for the feeling of importance that they actually go insane to get it, imagine what miracle you and I can achieve by giving people honest appreciation this side of insanity. One of the first people in American businesses to be paid a salary over $1 million a year when there was no income tax and a person earned $50 a week was considered well off was Charles Schwab. He had been picked by Andrew Carnegie to become the first president of his newly formed United States Steel Company in 1921. When Schwab was only 38 years old, Schwab later left U.S. Steel to take over then troubled Bethlehem Steel Company, and he rebuilt it into the most profitable companies in America. Why did Andrew Carnegie pay $1 million a year or more than $3,000 a day to Charles Schwab? Why? Because Schwab was a genius? No. Because he knew more about the manufacture of steel than other people? Nonsense. Charles Schwab told me himself that he had many men working for him that knew more about manufacture of steel than he did. Schwab says that he was paid this salary largely because of his ability to deal with people. I asked him how he did it. Here is the secret set down in his own words. Words that ought to be cast in eternal bronze and hung in every home and school, every shop and office in the land. Words that children ought to memorize instead of wasting their time memorizing the conjunction of Latin verbs or the amount of annual rainfall in Brazil. Words that will all but transform your life and mine if we will only live them. I consider my ability to arouse enthusiasm among my people, said Schwab. The greatest asset I possess and the greatest way to develop the best that is in a person is by appreciation and encouragement. There is nothing else that so kills the ambition of a person as criticisms from superiors. I never criticize anyone. I believe in giving a person incentive to work. So I am anxious to praise, but loath to find fault. If I, like anything, am hearty in approbation and lavish in my praise, that is what Schwab did. But what do average people do? The exact opposite. If they don't like a thing, they bawl about it out their subordinates. If they do like it, they say nothing. As the old couplet says, Once I did bad and I heard ever. Twice I did good, but I heard never. Let me repeat that. Once I did bad, that I heard ever. Twice I did good, but that I had heard never. In my wide association in life, meeting with many and great people in various parts of the world, Schwab declared, I have yet to find a person, however great or exalted his station, who did not do better work and put forth greater effort under the spirit of approval that he would have ever done under the spirit of criticism. That, he said frankly, was one outstanding reason for phenomenal success of Andrew Carnegie. Carnegie praised his associates publicly as well as privately. Carnegie wanted to praise his assistants even on his tombstone. He wrote an epitaph for himself which read, "Here lies one who knew how to get around him men who were cleverer than himself." Sincere appreciation was one of the secrets that the first John D. Rockefeller's success in handling men. For example, where one of his partners, Edward D. Bedford, lost $1 million on the firm by a bad day in South America, John D. might have criticized, but he knew Bedford had done his best, and the incident was closed. So Rockefeller found something to be praised. He congratulated Bedford because he had been able to save 60% of the money he had invested. "That's splendid," said Rockefeller. "We don't always do as well as that upstairs. I have among my clippings a story that I know never happened, but it illustrates the truth, so I'll repeat it." According to this silly story, a farm woman at the end of a heavy day's work set before her men folks a heaping pile of hay. And when they indignantly demanded whether she had gone crazy, she replied, "Why, how do I know you'd notice? I've been cooking for you men for the last 20 years, and in all the time I haven't heard no word to let me know you wasn't just eating hay." When a study was made a few years ago on runaway wives, what do you think was discovered to be the main reason wives ran away? It was a lack of appreciation. And I'd bet that similar study made runaway husbands would come out the same way. We often take our spouses so much for granted that we never let them know we appreciate them. A member of one of our classes told of a request made by his wife. She and a group of other women in her church were involved in a self-improvement program. She asked her husband to help her by listing 6 things he believed she could do to help her become a better wife. He reported to the class, "I was surprised by such requests. Frankly, it would have been easy for me to list 6 things that I would like to change about her. My heavens, she could list 1,000 things she would like me to change about me, but I didn't. I said to her, let me think about it and give you an answer in the morning." The next morning, I got up very early and called the florist and had them send 6 red roses to my wife with a note saying, "I can't think of 6 things I would like to change about you. I love you the way you are." When I arrived at home that evening, who do you think greeted me at the door? That's right, my wife. She almost in tears. Needless to say, I was extremely glad I had not criticized her as she had requested. The following Sunday at church, after she had reported the results of her assignment, several women with whom she had been studying came up to me and said, "That was the most considerate thing I've ever heard." It was then I realized the power of appreciation. Florin Ziegfeld, the most spectacular producer who ever dazzled Broadway, gained his reputation by his subtle ability to glorify the American girl. Time after time, he took drab little creatures and no one ever looked at twice, transformed them onto stage into glamorous visions of mystery and seduction. Knowing the value of appreciation and confidence, he made women feel beautiful by the sheer power of gallantry and consideration. He was practical. He praised the salary of chorus girls from $30 a week to as high as $175. And he was also chivalrous. On opening night at the Follies, he sent telegrams to the stars in the cast and deluged every chorus girl in the show with American Beauty roses. I once succumbed to the fad of fasting and went for 6 days and nights without eating. It wasn't difficult. I was less hungry at the end of the sixth day than I was at the end of the second. Yet I know, as you know, people who would think they had committed a crime if they had let their families or employers go for 6 days without food. But they will let them go for 6 days and 6 weeks and sometimes 60 years without giving them a hearty appreciation that they crave almost as much as they crave food. When Alfred Lunt was one of the great actors of his time, playing a leading role in Reunion in Vienna, he said, "There was nothing I need so much as nourishment for my self-esteem." We nourish the bodies of our children and friends and employees, but we seldom do we nourish their self-esteem. We provide them with roast beef and potatoes to build energy, but we neglect to give them kind words and appreciation that would sing in their memories for years, like the music of the morning stars. Paul Harvey, on one of his radio broadcasts, the rest of the story, told how showing sincere appreciation can change a person's life. He reported that years ago, a teacher in Detroit asked Steve Morris to help her find a mouse that was lost in the classroom. You see, she appreciated the fact that nature had given Stevie something no one else in the room had. Nature had given Stevie a remarkable pair of ears to compensate for his blind eyes. But this was really the first time Stevie had been shown appreciation for those talented ears. Now, years later, he says the act of appreciation was the beginning of a new life. You see, from time on, he developed his gift of hearing and went on to become, under the stage name of Stevie Wonder, one of the great pop singers and songwriters of the 70s. Some readers are saying that right now, as they read the lines, "Oh, phooey, flattery, bear oil. I've tried that stuff, it doesn't work, not with intelligent people." Of course, flattery seldom works with discerning people. It is shallow, selfish, and insincere. It ought to fail and usually does. True, some people are so hungry, so thirsty for appreciation that they will swallow anything. Just as a starving man will eat grass and fishworms. Even Queen Victoria is susceptible to flattery. Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli confessed that he put it on thick in dealing with the Queen. To use his exact words, he said, "Spread it on with a trowel." But Disraeli was one of the most polished, deft, and adroit men who ever ruled the far-flung British Empire. He was a genius in his line. What would work for him wouldn't necessarily work for you and me. In the long run, flattery will do more harm than good. Flattery is counterfeit. And like counterfeit money, it will eventually get you into trouble if you pass it on to someone. If you pass it on to someone else. The difference between appreciation and flattery? That is simple. One is sincere and the other is insincere. One comes from the heart out and the other from the teeth out. One is unselfish and the other is selfish. One is universally admired and but the other is universally condemned. I recently saw a bust of Mexican hero General Alvaro Obregón in the Chapultepec Palace in Mexico City. Below the bust of... Let me start that again. I'm just going to take a little drinking break here because this tea should have calmed down just a bit, cooled down just a bit. That's good tea. Oh, yeah. That's good tea. So I think I'm almost about... let me just look ahead. Oh, I'm one page away from the end of chapter 2. All right. Where was I continuing? I recently saw a bust of Mexican hero General Alvaro Obregón in the Chapultepec Palace in Mexico City. Below the bust are carved these wise words from General Obregón's philosophy. Don't be afraid of enemies who attack you. Be afraid of your friends who flatter you. No, no, no. I am not suggesting flattery. Far from it. I am talking about a new way of life. Let me repeat. I am talking about a new way of life. King George V had set out 6 maxims displayed on the walls of his study in Buckingham Palace. at Buckingham Palace. One of these maxims said, "Teach me neither to proffer nor receive cheap praise. That's all flattery is, cheap praise." I once read a definition of flattery that may be worth repeating. Flattery is telling the other person precisely what he thinks about himself. Use what language you will, said Ralph Waldo Emerson. You can never say anything but you are. If all you do is flatter, everybody would catch on, and you should all be experts in human relations. When we are not engaged in thinking about the definite problem, we usually spend about 95% of our time thinking about ourselves. Now, if we stop thinking about ourselves for a while and we begin to think of others' good points, we won't have to resort to flattery so cheap and false that it can be spotted almost before as it's out of the mouth. One of the most neglected virtues of our daily existence is appreciation. Somehow we neglect to praise our son or daughter when he or she brings home a good report card, but we fail to encourage our children when they first succeed in baking a cake or building a birdhouse. Nothing pleases children more than this kind of parental interest and approval. The next time you enjoy filet mignon at the club, send word to the chef that it was excellently prepared. And when a tired salesperson shows you unusual courtesy, please mention it. Every minister, lecturer, and public speaker knows that discouragement of pouring himself or herself out on an audience and not receiving a single ripple of appreciative comment. What applies to professionals and applies doubly to workers and officers, shops and factories, and families and friends. It is our interpersonal relations. We should never forget that all our associates are human beings and hunger for appreciation. It is the legal tender that all souls enjoy. Try leaving a friendly trail of little sparks of gratitude on your daily trips. You will be surprised how they will set small flames of friendship that will be the rose beacons on your next visit. Pamela Dunham of New Fairfield, Connecticut, had among her responsibilities on her job the supervision of a janitor who was doing a very poor job. The other employees would jeer at him and litter the hallways to show him what a bad job he was doing. It was so bad, productive time was being lost in the shop. Without success, Pam tried various ways to motivate this person. She knew that occasionally he did a particularly good piece of work. She made a point to praise him for it in front of other people. Each day the job he did all around got better, and pretty soon he started doing all his work efficiently. Now he does an excellent job, and other people give him appreciation and recognition. Honest appreciation got results where criticism and ridicule failed. Hurting people not only does not change them, it is never called for. It is an old saying that I have cut out and pasted in the mirror where I cannot help out and see it every day. I shall pass this but once, and therefore I can do any kindness that I can show to any human being. Let me do it. Let me not defer nor neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. Emerson said, "Every man I meet is my superior in some way. In that I learn of him." If that was true for Emerson, it is likely to be thousand times more true of you and me. Let's cease thinking of our accomplishments, our wants. Let's try to figure out the other person's good points. Then forget flattery. Give honest, sincere appreciation. Be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise. And people will cherish your words and treasure them and repeat them over a lifetime. Repeat them years after you've forgotten them. Principle 2. Give honest and sincere appreciation. Well, that concludes chapter 2. And I must say that reading this, I have to agree. Appreciation works wonders. I know working with a boss and within a family unit and within my community, it kind of goes over the head of a lot of people that they just want to have the show of blah 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 blah, yell praise, but they don't really teach you anything. They just say, oh, don't talk to this person. But I know that after a few compliments and some praise and a little bit of guidance works amazing, works wonders. Anyway, that concludes chapter 2. If you are reading along at home or in part of the feed, do leave a comment down below. I appreciate all comments and I do read them all. I will be taking a break here and ending the live stream on my YouTube channel so I can edit and upload this. And then I will be continuing with chapter 3 in a few minutes. All right. End that there.